You're listening to Dramas Over Flowers with Saya, Anisa, and Paroma. Hi, it's Anisa.
And it's Paroma.
And we got together today to talk about Lovely Runner because we love it. Saya couldn't make it this time, but we really wanted to talk about literally like we just finished watching episode 8 together, which was the first time for me and the second time for Paroma. But yeah, I mean, I think I speak for both of us when we say this is like feeding us right now. It's so good, right, Paroma?
It's doing something. The writing so far has been so perfect. I'm dreading the second half of the drama. It cannot stay this perfect. It just can't. This is a gay drama.
Yeah. So we just finished episode 8, so we're halfway through. But like before we get into our thoughts, which are very positive, let's just talk about the premise in case you haven't heard of the show. So Lovely Runner is based on a webtoon called The Best of Tomorrow. The original title of the K-drama is Run Away with Sunjae, or Piggyback Sunjae and Run. But the English title, the official English title is Lovely Runner, which honestly makes no sense, and I don't like it. How do you feel about that, Paroma?
I at least they kept the runner in it. It could have been anything, but it's just they made it generic. Whereas Runaway with Sunjae would have been such a perfect title. I don't know why with English titles they're so afraid of keeping any Korean words, including names of characters. They would just rather not do it. Like remember Oh Hae-young again became another Miss O? Why? Do you think people would die trying to say Oh Hae-young? Like what is the reason there?
It also is like so nonsensical to what the drama is actually about. So it just really, like sometimes an intriguing title will make you want to watch it, you know, like it's okay. It's okay. If the drama is good, the title can be a little mysterious.
Especially when the audience you're, putting these on streaming platforms for, they come to these dramas for these weird concepts and weird names. I mean, know your audience, man. Are you they keep trying to appeal to the larger, mainstream masses, and K-dramas have become really big, but at the end of the day, it's still relatively niche. There are still fewer K-drama watchers than anime, for instance. I mean, if you discount the one-time Squid Game and those very Netflixy K-dramas, those are people who come in, watch those few things and walk away. But like avid K-drama watchers, we are still a smaller community than the anime community, for instance. So why are you trying to appeal to everybody? Just appeal to us.
Right, exactly. We're here. We're already in the bag. It's like we don't need... Why disrespect the community that you already have for the community they don't have yet?
Yeah.
Or I guess not the community, the consumers. We're capitalists here.
It's just that the name, Runaway with Sunjae and Piggyback or Carry Sunjae and Run, it's just so perfect for this drama. It
has the vibes. It has the vibes.
It's all of Soul's personality.
Yeah. So let's talk about the premise, though, because we still haven't talked about the premise. Right. Basically, the female lead is Im-sul, who's played by Kim Hae-yoon. You might remember her from Extraordinary You or Sky Castle. Those were kind of her biggest roles. So excited to see her back on the screen. And then the male lead is played by Byung-Yusuk. His name is Sunjae, the titular Ryu Sunjae.
Last seen in Strong Woman Namsoon as the villain, Ryu Shio, I think, and he was just he definitely had the fandom already. Though it's been so weird, people have been going crazy over Sunjae. I've seen almost nobody talk about how these two are the same actor. It's like people haven't connected that Rushio and Rusanjay are being played by the same actor.
Interesting.
It's kind of amazing.
So I did not watch that because the first Strong Woman left me with scars, despite how cute the leads were. So I didn't watch the sequel, but I did see him as the rich best friend in Record of Youth. And I thought at that point that his acting wasn't, it was a little green, but he was very charismatic. And this role is just like killing it. He's doing such a good job. I love him. So basically these two, in the current day, he is a pop star. Are they an idol group or a band? I am still not clear. Okay, they're a band. So he's the vocalist of this really big band, and they're having this comeback concert after 5 years of not having done anything. He's been acting. She is a huge fan of his because she had this moment when she was really in a low place in her life where basically like they did one of those radio call-in things and he called her and he gave her some words of comfort. And so ever since then, for the last 15 years, she's been like a super fan. And she goes to his concert that night, but she's not able to get in. Like so many people now, that she just like hangs out in the parking lot and listens and has her own little mini concert, which is apparently a thing we do in this time. And she's like still has a little fan experience. And then she sees on the news that he has died and they think that it's suicide. And so she is devastated, but she has this watch that is like a watch that he used to have, I think when he was in high school, that she bought off some like used eBay type market. And somehow she presses this button on the watch and it takes her back to high school. And it turns out that he was in the high school across from her. And she didn't find out that until like way later, but now she's back in her high school body before the accident that like changed her life and like sort of totally diverted the course of what she was going to do. And she's like, oh, I can change things. I can save Sunday. Like, I'm going to save him. And so she goes on this whole journey of like, what do I do in this time when we're still like 19 years old and we didn't actually know each other?
Yeah, I didn't know him. And how do I make sure I affect his life now in a way so that, the trajectory changes and he doesn't take his own life, which is what she thinks he's done in the future. And that's a difficult thing, man. But it's just, she sells it. I'm just so darned impressed by Kim Hae-yoon because Kim Hae-yoon, she's just so good. Like the first episode is, listen, Byung Ho-seok is great. He's amazing. We will talk about how amazing he is. But the first episode was so crucial and it had to land perfectly. And Kim Hae-yoon just does such an amazing job because you have to buy her as a fan who has a difficult life, but, draws optimism and just like the will to live from her fandom for Ru Sun-jae, who's the idol. But she's also living her own life. She lives with her mom and her grandmom and her older brother. And she has things that she wants to do. She has ambitions and all of that. But then she hears about his death and she's, transported in time and goes back to her 19-year-old body. And like her entire being is focused on keeping him alive. To the point where, like, the first thing she does is run out of her classroom, go to the boys' school, go to the swimming pool there because she knows at this point he's a swimmer. And then, like, run to this boy who's coming out of the water. And he's like, he just has a towel and, like, swimsuit on. And she goes and like hugs him, crying because in her head she's just so delighted that he's alive.
She hugs him and tells him she loves him. Yeah. So I mean, without giving spoilers, which I think like what we can do is maybe make the first part of this a non-spoiler discussion, and then we can give a spoiler warning and then talk about like what's happened up to episode 8. Because I feel like there's some things that we really can't talk about without spoiling it. But like in general, this is such a good drama. Like I think we were talking about this earlier before we started recording, but the writing is so internally consistent. So not only do you have these two leads who are just performing their characters excellently, like taking them beyond even what's on the page, and they have so much chemistry and they're so cute, but not in an annoying way, but just like in such an adorable way. But at the same time, the writing is very consistent, and also, like you were mentioning, Paroma, like things don't just happen and then kind of get forgotten about. Like I feel like in a lot of dramas, they'll do something just for the sake of like having a comic moment, but it almost takes place like outside of time. So once that funny moment is over, they kind of go back to the regular timeline of the drama, and it's like that doesn't have any impact on their characters or on their feelings, and it's just like, so it kind of gives you like narrative whiplash or like character whiplash, where you're like, is this the same person? Like in real life that would never happen. Yes, Paroma, you want to say something?
I'm gonna bring up Queen of Tears here. And
yes,
as a negative example, because this is the thing that bothered Anisa and me about Kim Soo-hyun's character being just like, he's traumatized by his marriage, whatever. He's so delighted at hearing about the bad news about his wife, that she has a fatal illness and will potentially die in 3 months, that he's just like, all he feels initially is joy. And then that entire phase is kind of quickly passed over when he reconnects with his wife, and now he's all emotional about her. But the thing is, you started with those comedic scenes, those comedic moments, and then later on in the drama, you kind of pretend like that never happened. Like you do, like they're still referencing it, but you know that mentality where he was so removed from her that he could feel joy at the news of her death, like real joy. He's waking up happier. It's not a momentary thing. It's
right. It doesn't make sense with the kind of person that you later understand him to be. Like that person would never fall that far, basically. You know, if he was really that person, he would never...
Especially given the reasons they told us for the two of them drifting apart.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand him feeling that way about the rest of her family, but not about her.
Because in the end, like, what did she even really do to him? Nothing. She cleaned up their unborn baby's room too quickly without asking him. Like, that was really, like... That was the big secret thing that we were like, and they even, you know, later on, sorry, this is going to Queen of Tears land, but like they even later on do that thing where like.
Also, we are protecting Lovely Runner spoilers, but we are okay with spoiling.
I mean, I feel so disappointed by Queen of Tears and how it ended up in the last half that I don't even want. But I mean, these are not important spoilers to the plot, in my opinion.
No, it's really the process of watching their relationship that makes that drama worth watching if you want to watch it. It's not the plot. The plot makes no sense.
Yeah,
ever.
The plot is, But anyway, I think I'm gonna like at some point do a full spoiler review of Queen of Tears. But this is Lovely Runner. But the point is that these people feel like fully fleshed out characters, and like with the exception of like 2 or 3 characters who are relatively minor, the main cast of characters all, you can understand their motivations, they're consistent, they there's nothing that happens that is like consequenceless. And I don't mean that in a heavy way, but I just mean when something happens that's important, you don't just forget about it. Like they come back to it, you know, and these really well done callbacks. Like I can think of multiple examples of this where one thing happens, it kind of gets left there for a minute, but you never leave it permanently. It always comes back and it makes the story even richer, either in a way that's like related to humor or character development or emotion or, you know, just revealing more plot.
Hold on. For instance, I'm not going to give the full spoiler, but just to bring the example up because it's pertinent here. There is this one point where Soul's mom runs a DVD parlor back in 2000 and where were they?
2008.
8, yeah. So she has a DVD parlor. The next door neighbor is Sanjay and his dad. Okay, so her mom finds that there is this one DVD that has been checked out. And it was checked out under Sanjay's dad's name. So she calls him up and he's like, I don't have the DVD. And she's like, yeah, sure, give it back. You already owe us so much fine. And he's like, I don't have it. Da, 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 da. And that exchange just ends, and you think it's like introducing these older characters and their dynamic. That's all this thing is doing, and you move on. And then, end of episode 2, you realize that one little thing plays such a huge part in. We will talk about it.
The reveal at the end of episode 2 is one of my favorite kinds of reveals, because it's like, sometimes they try to do this and it just doesn't work, because you're like, oh, like nothing makes sense that already happened now that you've revealed this piece of information. But in this case, they reveal this piece of information and then you can see the whole episodes 1 and 2 through a different lens, and it works in the original way that you were watching it, and it works even more in the second, more informed way that you're watching it. And so it's like these layers of meaning. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
It's insane. I was just talking because we were just co-watching episode 8. Anisa hadn't finished watching that. We had just started recording, and I was like, let's finish watching that because I want to talk about that. And so we watched that entire episode. And there is this one sequence where it's just funny between our main leads. Sol says something, does something, and it's absolutely hilarious. And you move on from that and you think, oh, that scene has ended. It was funny. They've moved on. And then instantly you have Sanjay turn around and sort of reference it. And it's hilarious. And it just, it's so...
Yeah, kind of teasing her about it. Yeah.
Yeah. There is just this perfect connectivity between scenes. The characters feel more lived in and real because they don't just forget their personalities or the conversation they just had with each other. And this is something that can only happen when, yes, the writer is as good as Lee Shi-yoon is, but also when the director is fully in sync with the writer. Because every reveal that happens later on, or any connecting thread, any Easter egg, all of these things have to be very carefully planted, sometimes just visually and not even, in dialogue or anything like that. It just has to be part of the set design. Like the PD has to be completely in tune with the writer. I just love this. I forget who the PD for this drama is, though.
The PD is... There's 2. Yoon Jung-ho and Kim Tae-up.
What do we know Yoon Jung-ho from? Flower of Evil!
Yeah, he did Flower of Evil. He did My Hollow Love, and Kim Tae-up. Is this his first work?
Yeah, I really love Flower of Evil. I didn't watch Time.
He must be the
I heard good things about it. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, Ishion. I love this writer. She did True Beauty. She did Top Star Ubaek. She also she's done a bunch of like sitcom work, which means that she has a really good sense of like comic timing and sort of how to make things funny over time, which I think is a gift that sitcom writers have, of like, they know their characters really well. They create the humor for the show within that framework of like who these people are. And I feel like sometimes rom-com writers don't quite hit that because they have this imbalance between like the comedy and the romance, where they can only really do one at a time. And it's sometimes you're like, the first half is a comedy, second half is a romance, and you're like, I thought this was a rom-com, but like it's not really meshing together.
I love K-dramas for doing the genre mashing. I really do. And honestly, it's not like Lovely Runner doesn't do it. I mean, the structure of so many episodes, like there are chunks. You have the start, like when the drama starts, it's initially, a fan who supports this idol. It's an idol drama that way. And then by the second half of the first episode, it's a high school drama. And it stays that for a few episodes. And then it becomes this thing where, because they're both adults at this point, without spoiling too much, and it suddenly becomes all about them spending a lot of time together in a very short span of time. Like suddenly reuniting and just this compressed, intense span of a few hours.
Right. So then you have like
reconnecting.
second chance romance. And then on top of all this, you have the time travel. You know what my sister was saying, and I agree with her, is like there's a little bit of like it's giving a little bit someday or one day vibes. You know, where like you have she's going back into her younger self. So she's not going back into somebody else's body, but there is that element of like taking over someone's life, right?
But because they do show it that way, that her younger self she has blank spaces when older soul has been in her body. So her younger self is losing that time.
Yeah.
So that is a very scary thing that her younger self had to go through because this time travel is happening. It's not without consequences. And as horrible as that is, I love that there are consequences because time travel doesn't, it never feels rooted unless there is consequences for this immense thing that you're doing. What are you changing? Are some things changing for worse in your pursuit of, getting this one thing right, making sure, the idol that you adore continues living?
Yeah. A lot of times in these time travel dramas, they have their goal is to change this one big thing, right? Either they are trying to stop something from happening or they're trying to change the outcome of something. And like sometimes when it's not done as well or when it's done in a way that I don't find as effective is like everything else apart from that one big thing doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. Like they might change other things, but like either they're able to change that one big thing or they're not. And like if they're not, then there's a lesson and that's fine. But like what I appreciate so much about this drama is like even the small things that change, right? And even when like there's this moment where she's talking about the fact that like even just going back and having all these moments that she didn't have the first time around, regardless of whether the thing that she wants to change, whether she's able to save his life or not. Like these are moments that have changed her life, have changed his life, have changed the lives of the people around them. And like it matters and it has consequences. And it's also interesting, like sometimes we know what changed and why something has changed in the future, but she doesn't even really understand. Like the whole thing with her brother and her best friend.
I know.
She's like, how did this happen? I mean, I don't really like those characters. I'll be honest. I find them really annoying. But it's like funny how her actions changed their fate, but she doesn't even understand why or how.
What I liked about how the drama did this is that they didn't show Saul's direct influence, because usually what they do is a character interferes in somebody's life in the past, like deliberately. They make a choice to interfere because they're trying to prevent something or do... And that's how they change the course. So here, it was like a butterfly effect. And I like that because Saul could not have anticipated it. And she was so driven by her grief at Sanjay's death in the first timeline that she wasn't thinking about anything else. Mm-hmm. She's like, I have a second chance. I can prevent his death. Maybe I can prevent, my own accident. And let's try. That's pretty much, she's been driven pretty much by adrenaline this entire time. Which, by the way, I mean, this is not much of a spoiler, but tell me if it is. I absolutely loved when she got there and realized she can't tell anybody that she's come from the future or what happened in the future because everything would freeze the moment she started speaking.
Yeah. I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but we won't go in more detail. But I do like how that ends up working out in later moments. Like at first she's just like, oh no, I can't warn anyone about what's going to happen because like no one's going to hear me. But then like later on there's like interesting ways that she uses
it. That was
very smart.
That's what I mean. Like,
I like that she's smart, but she's not a genius or anything, but she learns. So when every time she does something, she's like, okay, let me reframe my strategy. Let me, like she is so relatable in that way where like you can understand why she makes all the decisions she makes. And even like the romantic obstacles between them, they don't feel forced or nonsensical up until the time they get together. Which like by episode 8, they'll have at least somehow gotten together somewhat. There is always a reason why they can't tell each other how they feel or they can't reciprocate the other person's feelings, that makes a lot of sense, is consistent with the plot, is emotionally resonant, and it isn't one of these where like, oh, like we could have cleared this up with one conversation, but we just didn't for plot reasons. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's none of that. Everything makes sense.
The other thing that I love about Imsol is how considerate she is. Initially, okay, one thing I'm gonna say because I have to. She travels back in time multiple times. Okay, it's not just one thing. So the second time she goes back, she realizes what her quote unquote possession of her younger body had A, done to her younger self, and B, what had happened, like some decisions that her younger self had taken after she left, meant that when she went back, she could just drastically undo all of them so that she could keep at her assignment, or she could be respectful of both her younger self and of the other people in her younger self's life and try to work around it instead of being completely selfish. And I love this. Yes, this is what makes a protagonist. Like, give me someone thoughtful and considerate who's making the best of the situation that they can.
Yes, I love that. And she's this, and like, obviously she's 32 now. She's not going to agree with everything that she did as a 19-year-old. Some of those things are going to be extremely embarrassing and cringy. And she even says at one point, she's like, oh my God, who knew? The villain of my own life is my own younger self. And I was just like, relatable. Yes, we've all been there. But like, still, she's so protective of that 19-year-old version of herself. She's so like, she thinks about her. And I mean, of course it's you, but at the same time, like some people would have been like, well, it's my life. I don't care. You know, like I'm still the one making the decisions. Who cares? And she doesn't do that. So before we move on to spoilers, I also want to say, like, I love her mom. I love his dad. I love all of how those family relationships build over time. And I think, like, one of the things that I like best about this drama is how it just feels like a world that is lived in, whether you're in the present or the past. Like, they've done the work. And I think you made a really good point about the writer and the director being on the same page, because a lot of times you're watching and you're kind of getting this like weird dissonance between what's being shown on the screen and how the actors are being kind of told to act versus like what the writing is telling you. And that's always an unpleasant experience. And here you can tell like everyone knows what show they're making. It all hangs together really well. I also want to say this music director is really good. And it always annoys me when we get a drama that is about music or has a main character whose profession is music and the music direction is like so bad. Shout out to Castaway Diva, but like there's been other examples, and it's just like takes me out in such a drastic way that I can't. It's one of those things that just I can't really hand wave. And you know, like I know that everyone has their own things that kind of take them out and they can't do the suspension of disbelief. But for me, like if music is a big part of the drama or a big part of the characters' lives, it needs to be believable, you know?
Yeah, the only not believable thing with Saya, we were chatting about it in our group chat, and Saya was like, because we told her we were recording this, and she was like, just put in one thought from me in this, and I'm going to read it out to you guys now. She says, now that I know a little bit about K-pop, the most unrealistic part of this whole thing is an idol group's debut song being a ballad, and B, a chart topper at that.
That is true. Although I do feel like that they occupy this weird space of like these bands that are kind of idol-ish, but who aren't actually idols. Yeah, if you think about like FT Island or like CN Blue, like they're not exactly idols, but they occupy a lot of that space. You know, it's a weird space. But I agree about the ballad thing and the chart topping thing. Like that's
absolutely true. But like, do these bands do they have chart toppers that are ballads? Because I thought ballads were specifically the domain of drama OSTs, because I rarely, like, you have solo singers doing gorgeous ballads, but rarely do I hear groups or bands doing them, like as the
I
main
think the fact
feature.
that this band is doing a ballad in itself is just weird to me. Like, what? Why a ballad? It doesn't make any sense. But other than that, I do find that the music works, and
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
It's really well done.
Oh, a couple of just general notes before we move into spoiler section. Actress Kim Hae-yeon is just, she's magic, but also her at 19 and her at 32 are completely different people. It's visually, they are completely different people, but also when they talk, they're completely different people. The way she looks at Rusunjae is completely different. I absolutely love Yeon Woo-suk in this drama. But he at 19 and he at 32 are exactly the same people.
I mean, that's kind of also who he is. You know, like I was telling you while we were watching episode 8, like I usually get annoyed when you have this like sort of this person who's just been in love with the same person for like so many years. But I think with him, it really works.
I know. So you're right. He had to be constant for that devotion to be constant. But still, like, it just his solidness and his similarity throughout those timelines makes her, like, the difference in her personality just stand out so much. Like, that 19-year-old girl is a 19-year-old girl. Like, you cannot mistake her for a 32. And when she is her 32-year-old self, even in the 19-year-old's body, not just the way they do her hair and makeup, but, like, her is just...
her whole... It's like... Again, to call back to Someday or One Day.
Oh, absolutely.
You can, within like one word, you could tell. Alice Wu was also really good at this in Someday or One Day, the Taiwanese version. And Kim Hae-yeon is also really good where like it's literally just the tone of her voice, the way she holds herself, like instantly within a couple of seconds, you can tell if she's the younger version or the older version or like which person she's playing, which is amazing. The other thing that I wanted to mention before we get into spoilers, this is the last thing. Unless you have something that you wanted to mention.
Oh, just that I love Kim Tae-sung. What was the actor's name? Song Yoon-hee. I have seen him in this short 8-episode high school drama about assassin teens, where he was excellent. He was so cute.
I love him.
He's just so good here. He's great. That's
the whole time that so he plays Kim Tae-sung, who is Kim Hae-yeon's like original high school crush in the like original timeline. And the whole time I was like, he reminds me of someone. Who does he remind me? And then I was like, and then he smiled and gave this one look, and I was like, oh, he reminds me of Sun Suk-gu. So now I'm just calling him Baby Sun Suk-gu. Sun Suk-gu is like the guy who played the alcoholic in my Liberation Notes. He also plays like this sort of secondary character in Mellow Is My Nature, which is the first time I saw him. He plays this like really weird director who's friends with Jeon Yoo-bin's character's sort of romantic partner, but it was kind of ambiguous.
Yeah,
but I loved their relationship so much, though. I loved him. After that, I was just like, Sansaku, I am in the can for you forever. So now Sung Gun-hee is going to be my baby Sansaku. I was also like, I know, like, I was really hoping we would see him in the adult portion, in the present day portion. So we won't say whether that happens or not, but I was really hoping to see him again. But he's great. He really stole my heart, and I felt sad for him. But also, he has exactly the role that he needs to have. It's perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Should we get? Oh, so the thing that I was going to mention. Sorry, I forgot. One thing that I wanted to talk about before we get to spoilers is like, so you have in the premise of this, you have a fan and her idol, and you know that it's going to be a romance. And so like, I wasn't sure how the drama was going to approach that. Like as soon as I realized that we're basically opening this drama where she's been a super fan of the male lead for like 15 years to the point where she has her room plastered with his pictures and she like spends a lot of money to buy merch that he has once touched, you know, like it's not just like, I love this group.
No, it's totally parasocial.
And this person is my bias. It's like this person holds such a deep Like that is the one person that she is a fan of. And it's very tied to like who she is and her past and her identity. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be okay with like them being together. But what I love so much is that once she meets him and has a real relationship with him, like once she goes back in the past and they meet as kids, it totally changes their dynamic. But at the same time, like, she still has that history of love and appreciation for him as a fan. And I don't think that that's, at least so far, it's never truly gone away, but she doesn't objectify him. So I feel like they've, I don't know how they do it, but they're writing this really fine line where like, I'm actually completely fine with them having a relationship, which I'm surprised by because I think that's really hard to do. It's probably also down to their performances because they're doing such a good job. She is doing such a good job, but like she never makes it so weird that you feel uncomfortable. Like she definitely makes it weird. Because being a fangirl is like ultimately it's weird, but she never makes it go so weird where you're like, oh, I'm getting the ick. I never got the ick. Like, how did you feel, Paroma?
I never had a problem. Like she went from fan to friend to lover. It was seamless. I think a lot of the heavy lifting was done by the script, yes, but also the way she looked at him and how even when she did the crazy fan things, it was channeled through desperation to save him and not like she seemed to have a very clear idea of the boundaries between fan and idol.
Yeah.
Despite having, his watch that she spent like, 3 million won to buy.
Yeah. I love
like
that scene where,
$3,000.
yeah, she's like, Mom, no, I spent $3,000. And she was like, what? She's like, no, I mean 300.
And I mean, I love that so much. So yes, she does those things because he means so much to her. But it's not something where she will ever cross the line to meet him or be in his space or become his friend for selfish purposes, because she wants him to know her, which is often where sussing behavior comes from, where, you want the idol to know you, recognize you, see you specifically.
Right.
And with Sol, it's not that. Because she behaves like a crazy person when she meets him in the past, where she clearly, like at one point, she's like, he must think I'm insane. And then the next moment she's like, just let's focus on saving him. There's no time to think about, my impression, my self-image. And that's true for her. Like she keeps doing insane things, which is completely has the potential to like blow up in her face, but she does them because she's desperate to save him. And the thing is that her wanting to save him so badly, like it's the way she reacts to his death is the way we would react to the death of a family member, somebody we really loved. He's of course not that person, which is why I think there is an element of like obviously a parasocial connection there. And while parasocial connections can be very, very negative, sometimes these are the connections that, give you a way out, something to hang on to when you feel like you've lost hope. It's not always negative, really depends on the case. In her case, Rosunje's existence made her existence seem possible. Because he woke up the next day and the sun was shining and he decided to live another day. She can wake up the next day when the sun is shining and she can continue living. It's like the hope he had given her was very tied to his existence. And even though the drama doesn't go into that dark place, that's how I interpreted her deep grief at his passing. That him not existing means hope dying. And of course, over the years, she's learned a lot about him. The way fans end up learning a lot about the people they love, the celebrities, because they are watching so many interviews, live streams. You feel like you get an idea of the person, and you do end up having affection for that person a lot. And if that person also represents hope for you, that's a really deep connection that I will not be able to understand to that depth, but I can recognize in somebody else. And this is where performance matters so much, because I don't think another actress could have sold it the way Kim Hye-yoon sold it.
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
Even in the first episode, like in the initial few minutes where she's like looking at a, like, I don't know, photo shoot of him or something, and he has a bit of his collarbone showing, and she just pauses and like takes a deep breath, and she's like, I'm not the sinner, it's your collarbones. And I'm like, that's a very fan thing. That's
very,
very,
very
despite that, at no point do you, as you said, she never objectifies him. It never feels like she's looking at him as somebody who needs to exist for her. Like when she goes back in time, and here, guys, we need to start the spoiler section because I really want to talk about this. So, spoiler warning. Okay, we are back, and I can talk about this. So when she goes back in time, her instinct is to move him away from that idol life, because she thinks that he committed suicide because of depression, or, you know, fans like sussing, getting to him, something bad that's connected to his idol life. And if he never becomes an idol, he never gets to have that conversation through radio with her. Like, as far as her first timeline is concerned, he played a crucial role in saving her life. And so her instinct is not to, you know, help him live for her own sake. It's because she wants him at this point, like, to just exist and be happy and just, you know, it's outside of herself. Like, he's not subsumed within her existence, and he doesn't need to, like you said, exist for her. So it's all of these minor decisions that the plot has, you know, Kim Hye-sun's character is making.
And it's kind of this ideal version of fan love, right? Yeah. This idealized and ideal version, which, like, some people are able to reach and others kind of fall short, right? Whereas, like, you're truly unselfishly loving this person. They make your life better. You're not necessarily asking them for anything. You're just rooting for them, and you want them to be happy and okay. And that's, like, a lot of times other things come in there, which, like, we see, you know, with the Sasang who, like, stalks him, and you even see, like, the conversation she has with the little kid when because she's like 14, where she's like, that's not really what it means to love someone or to like someone if you're hurting them and you're torturing them by, like, interfering in their life in a way that's making them uncomfortable. And so, like, the show is very clear on this, and actually, like, I appreciate how clear-eyed and morally there's even this one part where she tells Sunday, she's like, I'm a very morally upright and clear person. It's just that right now, like, I'm having, like, a situation where I can't live according to my values. And, like, it's really funny, but also the show is very morally clear. It's not murky. Whereas, like, do you remember in her private life?
I do. I was just thinking about that.
There's that scene where there's those sasangs who they beat up Park Min-young, or they throw eggs on her or something.
They think that she's dating the idol that they love, the thing is, she forgives them because they are kids and they are, like, sent off without any consequences for their action. But I don't think the show, which is the point I think you're trying to make, the show doesn't make the point, the very necessary point, that what they did was not just, like, kid behavior, and therefore after a little scolding they can be sent away. There was
and even when she's at the police station, she doesn't say, oh, they're kids and I want to give them another chance, which would be completely understandable. She minimizes their bad behavior as, like, oh, well, they just love their idol too much.
Exactly.
Which is very problematic, you know, like, whereas here there's a very clear, and she, like, Kim Hye-yoon's character, Sol, is even like, no, they need to be, like, when the guy's like, oh, like, he's gonna forgive you, like, when she gets mistaken for the stalker, he's like, just, you know, like, just don't do it again, he's gonna let this go, like, this one time. She's like, no, like, you have to press charges, you have to sue this person. Like, so I appreciate how clear this drama is about, like, what's acceptable and not acceptable fan behavior, and it doesn't fall into those excuses that often get used. and that even companies use in order to like not cut off that cash cow that is benefiting them so much, to the detriment of their own, talent. I really like that they do that.
I will say though, I find it very interesting that in the second timeline, 14 years have passed and not 15, which is a bit weird. But also not, because see, the thing is, in the first timeline, it was January of 2024 when, I think, if I'm not wrong, when the...
2023.
Was it?
Yeah. So this is happening at the beginning of 2023. And the thing that's different, what my theory is that when she comes back the second time, what she changed means that that guy came back and attacked her again. Because you know how she has that flashback about another violent incident when she comes back? And she's like, what is that flashback? So I think that somehow there was something else that happened.
Wait, which incident? What flashback did she have?
When she comes back, when she comes back and she's like about to, I think it's like when she's about to leave for work and her mom's like, take your car. And she's just like, oh my God, I have a car. Like I can drive. And then her mom says like, it's been 14 years.
Yeah.
And that part. And then also the fact that she has this other flashback of like glass breaking and some other stuff happening makes me think that maybe there was another incident in between that was 14 years ago and that she hasn't fully remembered yet, which is like probably the one thing that I find confusing is like when she does come back to the present time, there's a lot of things that have changed that it seems that she has access to the memories, but she doesn't necessarily remember it until like something triggers that memory. I don't know.
The thing is that I like your theory much better than mine, which is that I got the sense that her life is familiar because she has lived that life before, but she doesn't actually remember the specific events of the second timeline. Her body knows stuff like muscle memory. She knows how to drive a car, but she doesn't actually remember learning.
She does have access to those memories. I think it's just like she needs time to adjust because as we discussed, her brother and her best friend, their fate changes. So what changes is like in the first timeline, the first time she travels back in time, because of how she changes the events that led up to her house being on fire, her friend ends up being at her house with her brother and they have a fight. And then like that escalates into like more encounters and eventually they end up falling in love. And like that whole story is really annoying to me. Like they're both annoying. I don't really like them. But what that means is when she comes back, the second time or the first time?
I mean, the second time, because she had come back before that too and then immediately gone back.
Right. So she didn't. Yeah. So it could have been either time that changed it, but it's probably the first time, but she just didn't know until the second time. But like now they are married. Her friend is having her second baby. Like, she's her sister-in-law, and Soul herself doesn't even realize that her actions changed this or how it changed. Obviously, she knows it's changed. When she goes to the hospital and she's like, I'm going to kill the guy who made me like this. She's like, who is it? She's like, it's your brother. And she's like, wait, what? But then she has all of these flashbacks of them.
So I can't figure out if those are flashbacks or just the drama telling us what happened.
Oh, so that's my interpretation is that she has those memories.
Unless I
she just
see
doesn't
her
know she has them until she
accessing
thinks
specific
about it.
memories that younger, second timeline Imsol has, I won't quite believe it because so far she has shown zero, actual active use of, her second timeline memories. So far as much as I can tell, like she recognized the guy from the production house because she had met him the last time. And then the drama showed us a flashback of her walking in on her own feet. But it's, the way she approaches everything in that life is like she's seeing it for the first time. So it makes it very hard to believe that, Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on which of those two options. I agree with
I
you
would
that
prefer
it could be
yours
either one.
very much.
That's what I thought was happening.
Yeah.
That was the impression I got from the way it was edited and stuff. But I guess we'll find out. Hopefully we'll find out and they make it more clear.
Yeah, because I love this drama for even when they are, the story is progressing perfectly. There's like this lovely arc within the episode. Everything is happening. There are these small points of question marks, like that little scar on Rusunje's head. And now that you have pointed out that glass breaking thing that she had a flashback of, this makes a lot of sense. Maybe that is where he saved her life. Because I was thinking that little, that kidnapping thing that happened where she left her umbrella and then she, managed to run away. And then, the moment she, those people like Taesang's dad arrived at the scene and Rusunje arrives at the scene, that fate apparently completes, so she goes back into her own adult body. But Rusunje was actively looking for her. He went to the police station and all of that stuff. But you couldn't really definitively say that he saved her. So I'm thinking, given drama logic, something else must have happened where he definitely saved her that we don't know about. So this makes a lot of sense. Maybe that glass breaking
That's my
thing,
theory. Is that
and that's how he got the
wound
cut.
is also from that second time. That's why her mom said 14 years. That's my theory.
Yeah, I
so
agree.
We'll see.
Now that we're talking, this makes complete sense because I was not understanding this before. Which, by the way, I have no doubt that the drama is going to clear out these confusions as things go on, because they have been nothing if not excellent about, peppering bits of foreshadowing and then completely tying those loose ends as the episodes progress.
As we mentioned, yes. Yeah. So do you want to talk about a couple of those callbacks now since we're in the spoiler section?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. So we have the one that happened in episode 8 is there's this moment in episode 1 where and I just want to say, like, I know we didn't mention the fact that she uses a wheelchair in the first non-spoiler part. I don't know why you did that, Paroma, but for me, I just wanted to treat her like any other heroine. And I also didn't want to bring up the fact that that changes because I think that's a really big spoiler. So my way of dealing with it was just not to mention it. But of course, that's like a big part of her character is that when her accident happens, when she's, I guess, 19, she does become paralyzed from the waist down and she uses a wheelchair. And like one of the things that happens is she's able to change her fate so that she doesn't have that accident and she has the use of her legs again in the present. But one of the things that happens, one of the callbacks that I really liked is in episode 1, after the concert, when she leaves, her phone breaks down, so she can't call her friend to pick her up. And then she like starts to go on her wheelchair, but then she ends up being on the Han River Bridge and her wheelchair, I think like it loses its charge or something. So then she's stuck there. And he sees her and he's like, hey, like, are you okay? Did your wheelchair break down? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, can I give you a ride? And she says,
and she's looking at him and crying. And he's like, why are you crying? I didn't make you cry. And she's like, no. And this entire time he is holding a yellow umbrella, which he puts over her head while bits of snow kind of fall on his shoulder.
He's holding a black umbrella.
Black umbrella.
In episode 1, he's holding a black umbrella.
Sorry, a black umbrella that he's holding on top of her head. And she's just gazing at him like gobsmacked that the idol that she's been adoring from afar is right in front of her. And that exchange, that set of dialogue that they have in this scene is echoed in episode 8.
Right. Where she is worried that it's like the same things that are happening that happened the night that he died, which was the night that she saw him on the bridge. So she's like, doesn't know how to contact him. And all she can do is wait on that bridge with a yellow umbrella, which is a callback to the first time that he saw her and fell in love with her when they were teenagers, which she now knows about because she now realizes all the interviews he gave about his first love were actually about her. So she's carrying this yellow umbrella and he comes and she's got like her car is like on the side with its hazard lights on. And he's like, did your car break down? She's like, no, I was waiting for you. And she's crying again, but like, it's just so good. It's so good.
And this time she's the one holding the umbrella over his head. And the snow's falling on her shoulder this time. I just love these things because they avoid the pitfall that a lot of other dramas so far, you can never trust K-dramas, of always having the male lead protect the female lead with things like that, like the umbrella gesture and all of that, where, the male lead gets rained on. That's like happens all the time, and it's never the other way around. But with these two, it's often, it's always like a to and fro.
I mean, honestly, they both have saved and helped each other so many times at this point that, like, I can't even keep track.
Absolutely. But the way the drama shows the dance between these two, like their earnestness and devotion towards each other. So you have that bridge scene in episode 1 where he's holding the umbrella over her head. And then you have, when they go back in time, she goes back in time, and she sees him, and he, again, like I think the second or third time they meet, he's holding the umbrella over her head. And then at another point, because she grabs the umbrella and runs away. So it's like this exchange, this umbrella keeps going between the two of them. And then at another point, you find out that it was her umbrella to begin with. The very first time they actually met, like real 19-year-old Imsol had run up and had held the umbrella over his head, and he had completely fallen in love with her, and she doesn't even remember that incident.
Yeah.
But it's just this thing.
And then the candy being the candy that she gave him.
Yeah.
And then she ends up giving it to him because she thinks it's his favorite candy, and like as a fan, she knows that, and she has it, and she gives it to him, and he's like, "Oh, you're giving it to me again."
But it's only his favorite candy.
So many layers
because Imsol had given it to her. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, it's
yeah. I mean, this is the reveal that we're talking about at the end of episode 2, right? Is that he had always known her, and even on that bridge, the reason that he knew who she was not because of the little
hairband
headband that she had, but because he's been in love with her since he was 19 years old, and he's never forgotten her. But like the fact that she goes back and she has this whole relationship with him, where he was like always living next door and always so close to her all this time, and she never knew, and now like she has a chance to have all those moments with him. Like she was talking about, like having all those moments, which makes it so satisfying.
Exactly. I loved how, like I said, when the drama starts, like she goes back in time, she is so pressed to just save him. She runs to find him. He's coming out of the pool. He's just won the practice run, whatever. The swimming pool, there are so many people there. She runs through all of them, goes and hugs this near-naked boy, and is like declaring her love for him. And the thing is, while it's a ridiculous situation and it's hilarious, the look on his face, then he does not look at her like this is a crazy woman coming at me. It's like
he's like, "Oh, my heart just stopped, and I'm putty in your hands." That's the look on his face. And at first you're like, "Oh, maybe he just thinks he's really pretty," and then later you find out, "Oh, this is why."
There is meaning behind the expression, and also the fact that he continues to have that expression for her forevermore after that. It's just like he never doesn't have that expression.
But you know what? This is what's so amazing about this drama. Like, every scene has multiple layers of meaning. I don't know how they managed to do it so often and in so many ways, but there's always more than one thing going on. And there's like multiple ways that you could see something. So there's her version of a scene where like she's trying to protect this person that she's a fan of and save his life. But to the outside world, it just looks like she's a girl with a crush that's like chasing him. And then there's like him putting up with her crazy behavior because he has a crush on her. But then there's also this like surface level of like, she's like, "Oh, I'm just your fan. I want you to keep swimming. Like, I don't want you to hurt your shoulder." Like, there's so much happening.
and Anisa and I were talking about this while watching episode 8. She never makes sense. Like, she never explains her behavior in a way that would actually make complete sense. Maybe because he likes her so much, but also because her earnestness is so evident. It's vibrantly, constantly there. Her sincerity towards him is so obvious and real that even when he's very confused by her, like teenage Sanjay, he wants to be like an Olympic swimmer. And here is this girl that he has a crush on who suddenly notices him and is running behind him all the time, telling him not to compete. And he's like, that's my whole career. What are you talking about? And she's like, no, don't do it. You're just recovering from a shoulder injury. Don't take that chance. Don't take that chance. And he doesn't understand. And it's not like he's just going to agree. Like, this is his career. Of course he's not. But when she can't find a valid way of telling him, because, hey, yeah, she absolutely tries to tell him that she's come from the future, but time slip rules won't let her. Everything freezes. She can't text it to him. She can't write it. She cannot let anybody know. So what she does is she comes up with a plausible, somewhat kooky explanation, which is that she dreamt of a worst case scenario. And she needs to stop it. It felt so real. She just needs to stop it. And of course, the moment she says it like that, he doesn't take the dream seriously, but he understands her sincerity. He accepts it. Like, it's not like he'll listen to her. Of course he doesn't. But it's something that he doesn't mock her for. It's not something that it just, to him, he just needed to understand why she's so desperate to stop him. But once she gives an explanation, even though it's an out there one, he's like, I accept, her intentions. And that's all he needs.
Yeah. And because in that one situation, it does actually end up, what she predicted did end up happening. He pays attention to her warnings from then on. So when he might not believe them, but he doesn't completely
brush them aside,
just dismiss them out of hand. Yeah. So like when he finally asks her, like, hey, like, why are you so insistent that we need to spend this night together? When she finds him again, in episode 8, she's like, well, I had a dream that you might die. And he remembers her warning about her shoulder. And he's like, okay, well,
his shoulder,
regardless of whether this is actually going to happen, his shoulder, sorry. Regardless of whether this is actually going to happen, I believe that you believe this, and like, whatever. We don't need to argue about this anymore. Like, let's just stay together, because he loves her. So, And
it's not like his affection for Imsol is so unconditional. I have gotten so many DMs from different people basically telling me that Sanjay is just insane, like in that, like he's kind of unreplicable. He's giving people standards of K-drama male leads that just will never be fulfilled by another K-drama male lead likely.
This is why they should have kept the title of Runaway with Sanjay, because he has run away with our hearts. Like, what other title would work? What the heck is Lovely Runner? Come on.
It makes no sense.
One other moment that I wanted to bring up when we were talking about how, in the non-spoiler section, we were talking about how in this drama, like, it's not just about doing this one big thing. There are a lot of small moments. And she says that. She said, like, one of the reasons I feel like I came back is to have all of these moments with you, Sanjay. And, like, one that I found really moving was him teaching her how to ride a bicycle. On one level, like, talking about multiple meanings, it's like a cute scene of him teaching her him teaching the girl that he likes how to ride a bicycle, and they're kind of in their, like, some era by then where she is starting to have romantic feelings for him, even if she doesn't quite recognize it herself. But on the other hand, it's like, because of her accident, she never got to ride a bicycle. And it's like a thing that she never would have been able to do. And that she went back and like did almost like for herself in a way. And like, there are so many things that, like, the drama doesn't make a big production out of it, but there's so many of these, like, quiet, beautiful moments where you could say, oh, well, she goes back in time and it's just all about him and she's just, like, fully devoting herself to him. But it is unselfish and it is about him, but it's also, like, for herself in a way that, without being selfish, it's also really, like, her living her life the way that she wants, making her own decisions, having agency. And I don't know how it rides that balance of, like, having this extreme devotion to another person while also, like, fully living your own life. And I think they also do that with his character, with his extreme devotion to her while also, like, fully living his own life. It's such a healthy and beautiful relationship.
I think with her, the way they do it is she had a perfectly normal childhood, teenagehood. Like, as in, like, in her memories, her teenage life was nothing, it didn't stand out in any way aside from that accident. That moment changed everything. But before that, her teenage life was perfectly normal, mundane. It's not something that she desperately wanted to revisit. So while she's living that life, she's kind of going through the beats of it. She loves that she's back with her grandmother pre her dementia phase. And so she can talk to her grandmother. You see these moments where she's reconnecting with her. There is that lovely sequence where she thinks her mom is dating someone. And so she remembers teenage version of her was so angry when she thought her mom was going off on a trip with her boyfriend. And she said some really cruel things to her mom. And so in this lifetime, she tries to be more accommodating. And second timeline, she's trying to encourage her mom to marry again because you're so young, you're so beautiful, like you should marry again. And her mom just laughs it off. And you think that, oh, she solved it. Like she made things right.
Not only does she say that, she's like, we'll be fine without you.
And
we're grown up. We don't need you anymore.
She says that with the best intention ever. And then you find out what her mom was really doing, which is that she was pretending to go on a trip. And she was actually getting admitted to a hospital for a surgery. And her children had never found out. And that argument had just stayed frozen in history as, Imsol remembering her mom going somewhere with her boyfriend, and then possibly because of her accident, nothing ever coming off it. It's, I'm speculating here, but I'm just saying, like, that was a totally different story in her head. And when Imsol finds out through her friend that her mom's in the hospital, and she finds out the subterfuge that her mom had used to protect her children from that, and she thinks about what she said to her mom in this lifetime, which wasn't intended to be cruel, but she said that she and her brother were older and they didn't need her anymore. They could live without her. She said that so casually, but wanting her mom to be free of burden. And now she was just collapsing with guilt. How they did that, I am just in shocked and amazement.
Yeah. Just the way that it builds on meaning with every additional scene that makes you're having the amazing new meaning, but then you're also like adding more meaning to these older scenes that already were adding more meaning to previous scenes. Like, oh, it's just so good. No wonder this writer was like dissing Park Ji-yeon.
Okay, we got this.
Can we bring up the diss? Oh my god,
so good.
So Sunjae is being offered this script called Hero in 2023 by the movie production company that Seoul eventually works for.
Seoul.
Yeah, but there's this one part where his manager's like, why don't you accept this? You're being so picky. Like, and he's like, did you see the script? And then he explains the plot, and it's like
a mermaid falls in love with a North Korean soldier.
A South Korean mermaid goes to North Korea and falls in love with a soldier, but then he's actually an alien. And I was like, this is such a Park Ji-yeon diss. And like coming on the heels of that horrible ending to Queen of Tears, and also like, and I have to do more research on this, so I don't want to like say anything more than just like I've seen allegations of plagiarism on Park Ji-yeon's part for like multiple dramas, and I feel that's really concerning, and I want to do more research. But like, it was disappointing to even read the allegations because they seemed pretty serious. But like coming on the heels of all of that, and then just seeing how much she recycled earlier plots in Queen of Tears also. Yeah. I was just like, oh, sick burn.
Ugh, man. And the thing is, with Ishiun's writing, on the one hand, this feels completely fresh, right? This feels nothing like True Beauty. Like, she can clearly write high school romances really well. But these are totally different stories. However, there is this one moment in in 2008-9 when the past is happening, where you have what's his name, Sunjae, imagining that Seoul and Kim Tae-sung, which is the second lead, Imsol's first crush, they basically walk off to have a private conversation, and in his imagination, because he acted all cool and walked away like he did not care, but he cares very much. In his imagination, the two of them are having this passionate confession in the middle of a playground.
With the teddy bear that she gave him sitting creepily in the swing, which was so funny.
And it's just like the most overly dramatic thing ever. And that, I don't know if it was a callback or just a kind of scene that, Ishion just loves writing. But that was very similar to this sequence in Chaunu's imagination in True Beauty, where he imagines, what's her name? I forget the character's name. But basically the female lead, Moon Ga-young, walking away either. With the second lead. What's his name? Basically, like, she ditches Chaonu and walks away with the second lead, and it was just as dramatic. Like, you could put these two scenes
I had forgotten about that.
Side by side, and they had the exact same energy. And it's like, the only reason I'm bringing this up is this is a writer who knows how to keep her writing fresh and is very aware of similarities between her projects. And when she does borrow from her previous storylines, it's a deliberate thing that you can tell. You can clearly see the structure of it and why she borrowed it. And like, it's clearly intentional, is what I'm trying to say.
I think that's true. I also think that it's not necessarily bad to use things again or to, this is a type of content. Oh, I can't believe I just used this is a kind of television that thrives on the use of tropes, right? Yeah. And like, writers love tropes, directors love tropes, viewers love tropes. Like, there's no shame in having tropes or in like even maybe recycling storylines or themes or elements, but like, you have to do it in a way where it doesn't feel cheapened by the fact that you've seen it before. You have to do something a little different with it. You have to execute it in such a way where you're not thinking about all the other shows that you've seen where this has happened, or if you are, it only adds to your enjoyment, like the example that you just mentioned, Paroma, not you just feeling like, oh, this is like a diluted version of things I've seen this person do better in a previous work of theirs, which is how I felt in some of the scenes in Queen of Tears.
Was so frustrating, man. After episode 6 or 7, it just started feeling like homework to keep watching it. And if it wasn't for the leads' chemistry, it would just have been...
They were too good for that show, honestly.
They were just amazing. Yeah. Okay, I have just final thoughts on what I am hoping happens and like my theories of the second half, which I'll be really quick about. So the best friends timeline, that changing where she goes from a career woman to a girl who married right out of school pretty much or college and immediately had a kid. And then 10 years later, she's having her second kid. That like, so she has a very poignant conversation with Imsol, where she just had a fight with her husband because he's done some stupid thing with money lending, which all K-drama husbands' fathers seem to do.
Apparently, it's like some disease that you get when you get married. It just like happens. Like, you just end up investing in a bad
Get scammed situation all the time. Yeah. She's having this conversation with Imsol's like, so do you regret it? If you could go back in time, would you change things? And I like the answer that Hyunju gives, which is that I don't think I would take that risk with my future. Like, this is the life where I know what makes me happy. To go back in time and change things in a way, I might have a completely different life, one where I'm very successful career woman, which she was in the first timeline. But I don't know if that would have made me happy. Would I be happy in that life? And now we never got to know Lee Hyun-ju in that life. So we don't know if that life had actually made her happy. So she says, I would not take that risk with my life. Plus, I would not have met my babies, which, by the way, I love how Koreans, when they talk about their babies, they obviously say, I met my baby. And that just, I don't know, that just sounds like a very wholesome phrase.
Yeah, it's a really nice way of saying it. But before you move on to your theory, I just want to say, like, I also found that very moving and poignant, but at the same time, you have this knowledge in the back of your head that Hyunju doesn't have in this life, right? Where, yeah, Hyunju, she might have issues, she might have problems, but she has a pretty happy life with her husband and her kids. But for Sol, like, it was worth taking that risk because for her, she was facing discrimination, so she couldn't get a job. The person who had given her hope to not take her own life now seems to have taken his life. So she feels like completely desolate. This person is someone who she's poured all of the affection and energy that she wasn't able to put in the rest of her life because of all the things that happened to her into this person, and she's lost him. And so for her, it was totally worth taking that gamble because she wasn't in a great place. And like, sure, it might get worse, but like, it's already kind of bad, you know? So like, there's also that context, which is a layer of meaning that Hyunju doesn't have access to, but like we as viewers do. So we totally understand Seoul, but then we also totally understand this valid point that Hyunju is making.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't think, because the drama sees the discrepancy between the two lives that Lee Hyunju has had. It's a different life. It's not necessarily a worse life. In this lifetime, she's a housewife. It's a single income household. She can't contribute because she's taking care of the two kids, which is way more contribution, honestly, anyway. But it's not at all like the life she had before. At one point, she tells Seoul, because now she has her, career as a PD, I'm jealous of the life you have. But she says that in a, friendly, jealous way, not like a bad, jealous thing. I wish I had also walked into the interview with you instead of getting married. And it's just those tiny moments where you're like, yeah, she has some regrets. But I think what the story might do, and I might be wrong, this is just my theory, because Seoul will go back in time again. I think we might find a happy medium by the end of the story for her best friend. Because while she's happy with her, husband and her kids, and I don't think, because she loves her kids so much, I don't think it'll ever be a situation where the kids don't exist in another lifetime. I think they might create a situation where maybe she delays marrying the brother. Which, by the way, the brother is just, I don't understand, like, why. See, the thing is, this part of it I love, but like them falling in love was a series of such weird meetings. It's like the writer poured all her love.
Everything about that storyline is just completely nonsensical. I hate the brother's character. Like, there's nothing about him that I like. I think I just have like affection for him because that actor played Dr. Cha's son in Dr. Cha, and he was so wonderful lovely in that. But I'm just like, what is like in an otherwise almost perfectly written drama? Like, what are these two doing?
I think Lee Hyun had poured her love into the main lead so much that she had nothing left for these two.
I guess, but I mean, even their adult versions are fine. I just don't understand the child or like the young versions in 2008. While we're talking about 2008, can I just say, there's this like very particular and enjoyable nostalgia I get when we're in this 2008, 2009 timeline, because that's when I first started watching dramas. And so like, the music and the way the people dress and like the references and like what's happening in culture and like all of that stuff, it just makes me so happy because it takes me back to this like time when I was like really falling in love with K-dramas for the first time. It's just so nice. And I was talking to my sister too, and she was saying, yeah, like a lot of times when they talk about stuff that happened in the 90s or like when they go back in time to like much earlier, like that's not a time that I remember. So I can't, or that I was alive. So I can't like feel the nostalgia. But now like with this one, I really feel the nostalgia. I was like, yeah, it's really nostalgic in a nice way.
It's the perfect timeline. This was when I was in the last year of my school. I'm just, yeah. It's great. It's perfect.
Yeah, even like the phones, the way like the type of phones they have, and like the instant messaging online takes me back to my AIM days. Yeah. Pretty great.
Everything.
Anything else that you want to say before we wrap up?
I just have this one hope for the second half, which is, see, this thing that K-dramas often do when you have a first half that's very driven by the female lead's actions, is that in the second half, she becomes passive and the male lead takes over as the more active person. I'm desperately hoping they don't do that, because this drama, it works because Insol's the one who's the driving force. If they suddenly switch to maybe because there is a lot of, there are a lot of fan theories about whether or not you'll have, Sunjae ever time travel, and maybe he does at some point. And knowing K-dramas, they will always want to give the male lead some kind of like a major active role in the final quarter. But I just really hope it's not at the cost of Imsol's part, because that is something that I've seen happen so many times from W2 Worlds to any, which by the way, but the villain, the guy who drives the taxi, which we thought was completely resolved, no, he comes back. This guy, because of how he has no character, or like he's completely cardboard, he reminds me of the faceless truck of doom driver from W2 Worlds. Like that character, the writer, the creator of that world, of that manhwa, never intended to create that villain, like give him any personality, and that's how this guy feels. Ishion just doesn't want to give him a personality.
He's a complete cipher. I also I think that's the one thing that's kind of making me nervous and that I don't like, is that initially it seemed like it was a crime of opportunity, because you see the police, they're like, oh yeah, there was a body found here and in the reservoir, and it seems like maybe this guy just picks up young women when he gets a chance and kills them and leaves them there. But then it seems like he's fixated on her. He came back and attacked her again. Now he's even 15 years later or whatever, 14 years later, now he's doing it again. I'm not really on board with that. I don't really like that. I also, do we have to have a serial killer in every drama? It's just this drama did not need
really
one.
Didn't. They really didn't.
The
14-year-old thing.
It's the one thing that I don't
I think that 14-year-old stalker is somehow connected to the killer. Maybe she went there to warn Sanjay. I think she is not just an average fan. I think. I could be wrong. But they were because the 14-year thing, within a span of 2 episodes, they specifically pointed out 14 years. It just seems like this 14-year-old girl, and 14 years have passed since whatever incident had happened that Imsol doesn't quite remember.
But what? I mean, unless she was conceived then.
I'm kind of assuming something happened that we don't know. There is a timeline here. Because remember, Taesung, for instance, we don't know what happened to him. There is this entire storyline with his dad that we don't know about. What was his dad doing at that point when Imsol was found by Rusunjae? Because I don't think he got alerted by the station. Did he? Is that why he arrived there? Or was something else going on there that we don't know about?
Well, I mean, I assumed that he was just there at work.
Because we didn't see him.
Saw him and was like,
come
with me.
We didn't see him in the station, and they didn't arrive together.
There definitely seems to be something else going on, in the investigation that other patrol officer doesn't know about, because when he mentions that, remember when Sol says, I think that something bad is going to happen to me there, and he's like, oh, I don't know, and he's complaining about it to Taesung's dad, and Taesung's his dad is wait, what do you mean? What's going to happen? He's like, oh, no, it's just nonsense. But it seems like that triggers something in his mind that he has been investigating. Yeah. So I do think there's a bigger investigation that Taesung's dad is doing that we don't know about.
And I like this, because right now we are seeing one whole picture, and this picture works. We are seeing all parts of this romance, this time travel romance, and that's amazing. But other people are also living their own lives, and they have their own stories, and you get hints of that, and that creeps into the life that we are seeing at the forefront. And this is such good storytelling.
Not to keep calling back Someday or One Day, but I think that drama also did a really good job with that, where the story keeps evolving, and you keep getting new pieces of information, but it's not like it ever felt like they were holding anything back. Whereas a lot of times dramas that don't have enough story, they purposefully hold back pieces of information to the point where it becomes frustrating, either from the viewer or from the protagonists. And in this, you never get any sense that anyone's holding back any information. People are very honest. Whatever's happening is happening. The only one time where I felt like something was being held back ended up being really satisfying, which is him not having the courage to confess his feelings when they're teenagers. And then when he finally does confess to her, she's drunk and she doesn't remember it. And then she hears the first part of that that her MP3 player recorded, but then she doesn't listen to the whole thing. And I'm and then, but the way that comes back later, where she's hearing his confession in her earbuds at the same time that he's confessing to her in real life, is so good. And I was like, okay,
no. I have to correct you. He wasn't confessing to her. He's landed in front of her.
Okay, sorry.
And he said,
Not
can you
confessing.
break up with Taesung? Because at that point, her younger self had started dating Taesung and she came back to the body and was like, okay, I cannot break them up because that would be hard on my younger self. So anyway, she's still technically dating Taesung, even though she treats him like her son pretty much. And you have, oh, my poor little boy, you have Sanjay suffering so much because he used to watch the girl he likes date somebody else and he can't tell her how he feels because she's completely forgotten his confession when she was drunk. And then he arrives in front of her and he's been driven to the point by another argument they had where he's like, fine, I'll just risk it. And he's like, break up with Taesung. Can you do that for me? And he's saying these things, and because Imsol, the fan, has never thought of him that way, she sees him as a friend and a young boy at this point, but it's not that way. So she would not have connected it to his feelings. But in her ears, at the same time, that recording is playing and he's confessing, like that confession at the swimming pool happens, so that his words, can you break up with Taesung, gets layered with the real meaning, which is, I like you. And I...
So good. Yes. I was trying to be quick, but you put the exact... You corrected me very well.
We need to stop now.
That's exactly what's
stop.
happening. Yeah, I know. This is running long, but to go back to my point, that was the one time when they did hold back that reveal or that information, and it was very satisfying and it made sense. Whereas, like, remember 30 by 17,
oh
30, still 17, whatever. There's this one reveal. I don't even remember at this point now what the reveal was, but I just remember how increasingly frustrating I got where like they kept teasing you with this reveal. And it's like, what are we even doing this for? Like the viewers know what the reveal is. You're just torturing these poor characters by holding back this information and just like grinding the plot to a halt. And here that doesn't happen. The plot keeps moving. And I had this feeling when I was like halfway through Someday or One Day where I was like, there's nothing more to be revealed. And then like something gets revealed and you're like, what?
It's
and
perfect.
it's so good.
It's perfect.
And I'm having that same feeling with
And
this.
and the 30 but 17 reveal was so dumbass because it was also out of misplaced guilt because the male lead had tried to help her by delaying her stop or something, like, letting her get off at the wrong stop. And then she goes on and meets an accident. So in his head, he caused her accident. So the entire reveal, like for, I don't know, the next 15 episodes was, him not wanting her to find out that he was the one who quote unquote caused her accident. It was the stupidest thing ever.
Oh, see, kudos to you for even remembering that because I have no memory of any of this. I just remember how angry I was at how they kept stretching out the reveal, which is like an otherwise a really good drama, but that is one of those things that just like grinds my gears. Yeah. So I have high hopes. Hopefully this will not crush our hearts with disappointment, which has happened so many times in the past. But for now, I'm like very excited for the second half.
I do expect that our second lead is going to get his heart absolutely smashed to bits because that is something that this writer likes doing.
Yeah, I'm still a little scarred from Hwang In-yup's storyline in True Beauty, I'm not gonna lie. So, and he's giving me like a less angsty Hwang In-yup.
Even
like
his
here.
eyes, like that, those drawn out eyes, like
she really likes this like bad boy second lead character, and like I'm not gonna lie,
it works.
It's that bad boy that you liked in high school, who's not good for you, but you liked him because you were 17 or 18 or whatever. But it's like that bad boy with a heart of gold, which like usually they don't have that heart of gold, but in this drama he has a heart of gold. So it's just like just fulfills all of your like teenage girl dreams.
She also
in a really non-toxic
really
way.
likes athletic male leads who are also singers.
Oh, true.
So, guys, that was our spoilery review of the first half of Runaway with Sanjay on Piggyback.
Yeah, that's what we're calling it.
And you can find us, if you want to, on Dramas Over Flowers Twitter, which is at Dramas Overflow.
You can find me on Twitter at Anisa Khalifa _.
You can find me at The Drama Notes. You can find us on Instagram at dramasoverflowers_, and you can email us at dramasoverflowers@gmail.com.
And you can subscribe to our Substack in the link below or at dramasoverflowers.substack.com.
We are planning to sort of connect our domain, like the website that we used to have, dramasoverflowers.net, with the Substack. So at some point, you can also just type dramasoverflowers.net, and that will also take you to our Substack, where, by the way, Anisa had written this amazing first impression review of Queen of Tears, and honestly, the drama doesn't deserve her words, but it was beautiful. Yes, she had
such high hopes. I know. But anyway, so that's under construction. But in the meantime, you can find our writings and things at Substack. Okay, thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.